I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. It's the Wilk Report. I'm Michael Wilk, coming to you from Cleveland, Ohio, and I will never, ever get back the 4 hours that this crapfest stole from my life. And then, yes, I am talking about the Snyder Cut of Justice League, finally dropped to HBO Max, and it is a 4-hour-long utter mess of a movie. I kept having flashbacks to 300 and Watchmen, and this thing felt like a mashup of the two movies because everything is just so god-awful. I don't know why anyone says this is better than the Whedon cut that we got in 2017, because it's not. I mean, Snyder does just about everything wrong with this movie that can be done wrong with the movie. And a lot of that has to do with pacing, with giving everything an overinflated sense of self-importance.
It insists upon itself.
Yeah, it does insist upon itself, to the extent that you wonder what Warner Brothers was thinking throwing $70 million at this project. I mean, yeah, early estimates for the Snyder Cut were $30 million, but it ended up being roughly about $70 million. So on top of the money that Warner Brothers plopped down for the rather underwhelming Whedon Cut, they plopped down an additional $70 million for the Snyder Cut, and it's actually worse than the Whedon Cut. For people who think it's better, I don't know why, because if your definition of better is simply not being as bad as what we got in 2017, then, you know, that's a pretty low bar. But this is just an awful movie, okay? And a good example, a couple of examples, and this has to do with pacing and, you know, the movie insisting upon itself, all right? So, you know, early scene, you've got Bruce Wayne, played by Ben Affleck. He's walking into the Alaskan village to find Aquaman in order to recruit him. Now, in the Whedon Cut, you know, we got a much shorter, much more lighthearted scene. In this one, we've got Bruce Wayne, for reasons, walking an interminably long length of time for a movie running time. There's an inordinate chunk of footage showing him lighting up his campfire. He's putting out his campfire. He's walking. He's picking his nose. He's taking a dump and taking time to read the paper while he's doing it. I mean, okay, a bit of an exaggeration, but, you know, you get the point. Before he finally gets to the village. Another scene and a difference between the Whedon Cut and the Snyder version is when Wonder Woman is warned about Steppenwolf and what's going on. There's an arrow of Artemis fired as a warning, and it hits a Greek temple that Diana sees on television, and that's her cue to go find out what's going on. And in the Snyder Cut, there's this overlong scene where there's all this pomp and circumstance surrounding taking the arrow out of the box, giving way too much expositionary dialogue, then, you know, slow motion, lighting the arrow, drawing back the arrow, firing the arrow flying across the world, the arrow hitting the temple, and it's minutes more than you actually needed. And, you know, the movie is full of this stuff where, you know, everything is given, you know, so much more self-importance than it really needs and deserves, that, you know, it just eats into the running time. And so, you know, by the time you get to the actual movie, because half the movie, the first 2 hours, is nothing but setup before you even get to the action. Now, granted, with Superman the movie back in '78, you don't get Christopher Reeve in the costume until, you know, over an hour into the film, but it works because of the editing and the setup. You know, it just works. You know, I mean, that's because you had Mario Puzo writing and Richard Donner directing it, and very tight editing contributing to make it this epic film that never felt over long. Even the 3-hour TV edit is just fantastic, and the extra scenes, even though they're not necessary, but they still add to the story and move it along, whereas all the extras that are put in here, it's like, okay, so, you know, a little bit of background, you know, so Zack Snyder's daughter committed suicide. and he stepped down from the project about three-quarters of the way through, and Joss Whedon, who had directed the Avengers, was brought in to finish up. He ended up having to reshoot a lot of scenes, and then, of course, the Warner Brothers execs rushed the movie to an early release so they could get their year-end bonuses before leaving for greener pastures. And, so we end up with this Frankenstein movies with, clashing tones and stuff that was clearly reshot because, what Snyder shot was unusable. Especially for a theatrical release, you can't use most of the stuff that's thrown in here because it puts so much into the running time without actually adding anything to the story. It doesn't move the plot along. So by the time you get to the action starting up, it's already halfway over and you've already fallen asleep like 5 or 6 times. Steppenwolf, he's still a CGI mess. And the only real difference between the cartoony-looking CGI Steppenwolf in the Whedon cut and the cartoony CGI-looking Steppenwolf in the Snyder version is that the Snyder version Steppenwolf blends into the background more, and unless he's moving, you really can't pick him out from the background. So he's like this floating face or something. Still looks terrible. I don't know why anyone thought that this looks good. It doesn't. The colors are basically, it's dark and washed out, in keeping with Snyder's dark aesthetic. But I'm going to go ahead and turn on the browser here so you can get a look, because the New York Post has done a thing. Yeah, Justice League reviews Zack Snyder's film still sucks and it's 4 hours long. Now, ordinarily I wouldn't put any stock in the New York Post. It's a far-right tabloid rag, but this one was surprisingly scathing in its review because you would expect a right-wing rag to support a right-wing rag of a movie, but no, it's like, okay, so how slightly less terrible, how would that look on a poster? That is my approved quote for Snyder's Justice League, a perverse exercise in fanboydom on HBO Max that tacks on 2 extra hours of footage to a maligned 2017 DC Comics movie to create a kind of new, still bad movie. I mean, ouch. I mean, this guy just bitch slapped Zack Snyder. Justice League 2.0 is darker than an Arctic winter, has a score composed by a foghorn, once again features Ben Affleck's couch potato Batman, and clocks in at 4 hours. That's 60 minutes longer than Avengers Endgame. And the reason Avengers Endgame was 3 hours was because it was an epic finish to something that had been building up for over 10 years. So you really kind of had to make it that long. Okay, so why Warner Brothers dropped a reported $70 million to redo a 4-year-old movie that now lasts 1/6 of a day? Yeah. Why does this wayward world of ours do anything? Social media. 4 years ago, Snyder was unable to finish his flick in post-production and handed the reins to Joss Whedon. The end result was an abysmal Frankenstein's monster of styles. Snyder's sludge and Whedon's slapstick. Disappointed fans then birthed the Release the Snyder Cut Twitter hashtag, and today their demented dreams have come true. So have my nightmares. Oh my God. That again, is just a completely... This guy does nothing but bitch slaps Zack Snyder throughout the entire article, and there's a lot more. So I'm going to go back to the article. Oh my God! With so many additions shoved in, less has changed from the original than you might think. The movie is still about Batman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg trying to save the world from the evil Steppenwolf, and Snyder has redone the look of the bottom of the barrel villain who appears to have borrowed his shiny new outfit from Lady Gaga's Vegas show. And it's true. I mean, look at this crap. I mean, there's no improvement here. I mean, God. So lame Steppenwolf's nondescript boss has my favorite line of the movie. You still owe the Great One 50,000 more worlds. So most of the Justice League 2.0 sounds equally laborious. Instead of 20 minutes of confusing exposition, we get over an hour of it. Much of the history of these ancient wars is delivered by a professional get-out to us, her bored students. The gist, Steppenwolf works for Darkseid, who needs the 3 mother boxes to take over Earth. See, a costly new edit does not change that the movie is a trashy Lord of the Rings. Granted, thanks to the cash windfall, the action scenes aren't so cheap looking anymore. One neat one sees Wonder Woman protect a group of innocents from a gunman, and the Flash is, well, flashier. But part of why the movie is preposterously long is that Snyder goes all in on slow motion. At one point, he even makes an average football game slow motion. I used to work security for the Cleveland Browns, and honestly, if you were to slow down a football game like that, I mean, people would just give up and go home, because football games generally tend to run 3 or 4 hours as it is, with all the timeouts and having to take positions on the field. It can get pretty long. But with this, it's just slow motion scenes are basically used for effect. All right, to kind of heighten the drama of a particular scene, and when it's used sparingly, it can have a powerful impact on a scene and make it stand out from the rest of a film. But here we get so many of them. I mean, Tom Connors over at Midnight's Edge refers to Star Trek the Motion Picture as Star Trek the Slow Motion Picture because of the pacing, which, frankly, I don't think is really fair, because, having come out in the late 70s, people had longer attention spans, but also there were reasons why the scenes went on as long as they did, and that was to give you a sense of scale. The humans flying in the ship porn scene, where they're flying around the Enterprise on the shuttle after it's been refitted and given a whole new look. So yeah, part of it is to show off the flashy new Enterprise model, but also part of it is to give the viewer a sense of scale. The humans are tiny, the ship is big, and when the Enterprise reaches V'ger, the alien threat that's approaching Earth, V'ger is massive. It's about as big as a solar system, and it's approaching ours. And so the Enterprise is seen as being like this tiny little thing against this ginormous intergalactic cloud. So, that's why you get this sense of scale and all these scenes that are kind of padded out, and that actually works for the movie. Here, you've got nothing but slow motion just for its own sake, because, again, Snyder is insisting on this movie as the greatest thing since sliced bread, and so everything, again, is given this overinflated sense of self-importance. Slows down the movie unnecessarily. You could probably trim down a huge chunk of running time just by speeding up these scenes to a regular pacing, and then get rid of all the extraneous bullshit that you don't need. It's like Snyder took all the footage that he had shot, all the stuff that really was not even necessary and would have been left on the cutting floor anyway, and just threw it in whether or not it made any sense or moved the story along. So yeah, I mean, oh my god, let me get back to the article here. All right, so Shuri succeeds in realizing his vision. Is just that the director needs an eye exam. Snyder has washed out all the color of the footage and doubled down on his preferred grandeur at the expense of character development. Even with new sections in which Cyborg connects to his dad, Silas, played by Joe Morton, and a fun pet shop sequence with the Flash, still the only great character in the movie, there's no texture thanks to the faux epicness. And, again, that's a problem, because, superheroes are supposed to be colorful. They're supposed to be optimistic and give you hope. Snyder commands a slavish following of fans who are plotting to murder me even now. Yeah, I'm sure. Zombie-like, they got behind the similarly off-putting Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Stupid, and Buns of Steel, which, like Justice League, were treated like Wagner operas. Hell, Snyder would turn Barney the Dinosaur into Das Rheingold. Oh my god. That is appropriate, because, yeah, Snyder really is that full of himself, and so are all of his movies. But yeah, I mean, Das Rheingold, that's funny. The film's 4 or 5 endings leave open the possibility of an 8-hour follow-up for Snyder, God forbid, and the Twitterverse will surely demand it. Our one saving grace is that a new Batman movie starring Robert Pattinson is on the way, seemingly making Affleck unusable again in the part, but the DC universe is such a mess they'd probably do it anyway. DC should change its initials to DGAF for Don't Give a Fuck. Ouch. Yeah, and that's probably the most honest review I've seen by corporate media in a while. I mean, the reviews I've seen on this are mixed at best. Some people like the movie, they think it's epic and all that, but those were people who were already committed to liking it, regardless whether or not they had seen it. Thorias Unlimited gave his scathing review. Again, he says it's better technically, but in many ways it's actually worse, and I have to agree. I mean, it's actually much worse from a technical aspect because, again, you're taking away all the color out of this. I mean, for example, Superman inexplicably changes it into a black costume, which makes no sense. I mean, gone are the dark red and blue color scheme, and he just moves to this black outfit for no apparent reason because Snyder just likes his characters to be dressed in black or dark colors. And Superman, I mean, if you think about it, Superman really should be brighter colored in his costuming, and also should be brighter in his presentation. Because if you look at the Christopher Reeve Superman, all right, Superman in the Richard Donner movies gave us something to hope for, something to look up to and aspire to be. Superman sets an example for how people should behave, all right, to do better and to be better. Christopher Reeve's Superman was a kind of Superman who wasn't afraid to give second chances to bad guys who he thought deserved it. Like, for example, Miss Tessmacher in the first Superman film in 1978, she is kind of attracted to the good guy, even though she's a girlfriend of the bad guy. She rescues Superman, because Lex Luthor's schemes have put her mother in danger of her life, and Superman's the only one who can save her, and she rescues him from kryptonite because she wants him to save her mother. And, I mean, you can say it's kind of selfish, but, she still could have let him die. She could have been like Lex Luthor and say, oh yeah, I don't give a shit. I mean, she's only my mother and she's old anyway. But, that's not the character she was written to be. So she saves Superman, and as a result, at the end of the film, he saves her life, which, has consequences going into the next movie. But, that's the kind of thing that, he's not afraid to do. It's like, okay, yeah, you saved me. You didn't have to. So, yeah, I appreciate it. And then, of course, in Superman 3, which, admittedly, that was a movie with a lot of problems. But, the Gus Gorman character, played by Richard Pryor, he's not a bad guy. He's actually just an okay guy, just makes some bad choices and comes to regret it. And, again, he saves Superman when the time comes to pick sides. He picks the side of saving Superman, against his own creation, which has gone wacko. So, Superman, instead of putting him in jail with the others, he lands him at a place where, he can hopefully get a job. That's the kind of hero Superman is, because, he's not someone who's just going to, just go in and pound everything and, massive property destruction. He actually goes out of his way to avoid property destruction. Most importantly, he goes out of his way to protect people from getting hurt in the first place. With Zack Snyder's iteration, this is a guy who is shown basically, engaging in feats of strength and supposedly saving people. He does more damage than is warranted, but he's seen so rarely interacting with people, and when he does, he usually runs away from having to actually talk to people. It's almost like, how dare you plebeians touch me? And plus the Christ-like presentation of Snyder's Superman. I mean, it's pretty obvious that Snyder is shoving his religion down our throats and kind of turning Superman into an allegory, for space Jesus, which to me is blasphemous to begin with. But it's also, it's really unnecessary too, because that's. I mean, I'll put it to you this way. Donner and Puzo did a lot better with Superman the movie, okay? Because Superman basically is, in that film, a hero who is given a choice, okay? Because, in fact, one of the reasons why it takes an hour just to introduce us to Kal-El as Superman is because you have to build up his backstory as Clark Kent. There's a scene where Jonathan Kent dies of a heart attack. It's It's just old age and a bad heart. And at the funeral, Clark tells his mother, who's now a widow, all those things I can do, all those powers, and I couldn't even save him. And so that one scene where Jonathan Kent dies from a heart attack of natural causes, beyond his control, beyond Superman's control, he can't stop the people he loves from dying unless he interferes with human history in a really big way. And even then, there's only so much he can do. He's not perfect. He's not invincible. He's not all-powerful. People die when their time comes. And his inability to save his father drives him to make a decision towards the end of the movie that, has lasting ramifications. He does that because, he has to make a choice, because even though he's been told that, even though you're raised as a human, you're not one of them, even though he's from the planet Krypton, he was raised in it as a human, and he's lived among humans his, entire life, practically. And so, he's part of human society. He's in it. He lives in it every day. And he can't not interfere in human history because he's part of human history. And so the choice that Superman makes at the end of the Donner film, it's believable because, ultimately he is human. Superhuman, yeah, but he is still human. But with Snyder's version, he's just this nihilistic, selfish, whiny emo bitch who does all these feats of strength, but they don't really mean anything. Batman, played by Ben Affleck, Affleck is basically phoning it in, just like he was doing during Batman versus Superman. He's given there's very contradictory reasons for, he feels bad that Superman died, yeah, but Snyder expects him to behave as though he feels really bad because Superman was his friend. But, in Batman versus Superman, they barely knew each other and they spent most of the time fighting. Feeling guilty about it is one thing, but, one of the things that drives him to do this is this vision he has of this post-apocalyptic world. But then he has another vision where Superman has turned evil and is ruling the planet with an iron fist, a la in Justice League. There's another gripe here, okay? And this is another thing that adds like easily another 20, 30 minutes of runtime to a movie that really didn't need it. Snyder does not seem capable of picking one ending and sticking with it. He has to take all the endings he shot and add them in. So, all the characters, or rather concepts masquerading as characters, there are no real characters in this movie, they each get their own ending. And again, that really just doesn't work. All right, it just adds unnecessarily to the running time while adding nothing to the actual story. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, this movie's a mess. It's even worse than the Whedon cut. I told you in my last video on this subject, you might want to hang on to your copies of the Whedon cut because I think you're going to regret it. And I was not wrong. Like I said, I think the people who say that this movie is so much better are kidding themselves. I think they're just trying to convince themselves because they just don't want to believe that they spent all this time waiting for this thing, that they just want to invest in it emotionally just because they can't stand Joss Whedon. And to be fair, Joss Whedon is really an asshole, as we've seen exposed over the last year or two, which might explain why Cyborg is given more screen time here than he was in the Whedon cut. But it's nothing good because it suggests that Cyborg could easily go bad if he wanted to. And that's, the problem with the overall messaging was people are heroes not because they do good. They're not heroes because, they've chosen to use their powers in a way that benefits people. They're heroes because they choose not to destroy us. I mean, what the hell kind of a message is that? Anyway, what do you think of this movie? Let me know in the comments below. I want to hear from you.
It insists upon itself.
If you like what you heard and you want to hear more, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to receive notifications whenever we upload new content. Like this video, share it. If you want to help support the channel, keep the lights on, help us bring you more content, head over to our Patreon or our Ko-fi page. We can't do this without you. Until next time, this is Michael Wilk for the Wilk Report saying take care, good night, I'm out.